This is a tale steeped in darkness and resurrection, where the lines between life and death blur. Edgar Allan Poe, a master of the macabre, crafted narratives pulsating with the unresolved sorrows of spectral women, each representing a fragment of his own haunted psyche. These figures clawed their way from the depths of oblivion, embodying fury and unyielding spirits. Their stories ripple through time, influencing countless writers and artists who dare to explore the shadows of human nature. Poe's own fate echoes theirs, as he too became a wraith wandering through his own tales, rejecting the cold grip of finality. His shadow looms over modern storytellers, like Jahan Brian Ihsan, who delve into themes of psychological horror intertwined with the fervour of American religious zealotry. Through these narratives, the past becomes alive, and unfinished tales of the damned resonate with contemporary audiences. At the heart of this Gothic tradition lies a rich soil filled with secrets, vengeance, and whispers of the dead. The graveyards and haunted places in Poe's work serve as more than mere settings. They are characters in their own right, steeped in the weight of the stories they hold. Each grave tells a story, and each whisper from the void beckons the living to confront their own fears and complexities. Welcome to this journey through the chilling and enthralling world of Poe and his spectral muses. Part 1. The Wrong Grave. Edgar Allan Poe's end in Baltimore, 1849, mirrored his own nightmares. Delirious ravings, incomprehensible mutterings, a death shrouded in enigma. Theories abound, from rabies to alcohol, cooping, or perhaps poison. In death the mockery deepened. They thrust him into a humble pit at Westminster burying ground. No headstone, no inscription, just clods of indifferent dirt over the architect of femme hauntings such as Ligeia and Annabel Lee. Pilgrims sought him years on, staring at emptiness. They mourned a spot that might, or might not, hold Poe. Even extinguished, he was adrift, perhaps entombed among the forgotten, a weaver of unearthly dread whose grave dissolved into dread itself. For 26 years he mouldered unmarked, entangled with the nameless dead. Then, in 1875, Baltimore sought atonement. A towering monument of white marble rose, imposing, penitent. Their belated remorse, the cynics hissed. A futile gesture, the shadows murmured. Yet, as shovels pierced the earth, the coffin splintered like charred bone. Rumours persist that they first unearthed the remains of another, Philip Mosher Jr., a forgotten soldier from 1812's wars. A stranger potentially confused in Poe's stead, as if the grave mocked the diggers. Deeper they delved, unearthing what were believed to be Poe's remains. The creator of tales on living entombment and subterranean agonies endured a desecration as twisted as his visions. Relocated at last to the grand edifice, but the original pit remembers, its soil forever tainted, whispering of the misplaced and the unquiet, a separate marker later placed there in error, though empty of bones. Part 2. The Women Who Would Not Rest, the Return of the Repressed. Just as Poe's own bones defied their earthly confines, so too did the spectral women of his tormented imagination. Figures entombed, yet fermenting with unquenchable vitality, embodying Freud's return of the repressed, as desires long buried erupt in undead form, haunting the psyche with insistent forbidden yearnings. Contemplate Ligeia, ethereal as a shroud of midnight mist, who succumbs to mortality only to commandeer another's failing vessel, her indomitable essence, arrogant, perhaps vengeful, refusing the grave's hush. Her revival a sacrilegious fusion that unveils repressed longings clawing back from oblivion. Observe Morella, her sterile frame a conduit for uncanny renewal, reincarnating through the offspring she begets. A phantom that mocks decay and merges motherhood with sorcerous domination. The repressed maternal spectre resurfacing to possess and unsettle. Regard Madeline Usher, immured alive in The Fall of the House of Usher, bursting forth in crimson fury to consign her anguished brother to collapse. Her resurgence a visceral rebuke of hasty entombment, where buried traumas return with vengeful force. And forever, Lenore, the elusive paramour of the Raven, absent yet all-encompassing, her emptiness a devouring malediction that consumes the bereft, a void that clings like a spectral caress, the repressed grief manifesting as eternal torment. Poe's women refuse repose. They seethe, they emerge, they linger as half-uttered curses, their immortality infused with erotic subcurrents, the survivor's fixation on the cadaver, a mental necrophilia that tethers the living to the departed, Freud's repressed impulses rising through Gothic veils. In his tales, sepulchres prove mere diaphanous partitions, torn asunder by a woman's inexorable resolve, a motif that resonates in the tapestries of subsequent authors, enriching this intertextual lineage with deeper psychological layers. Angela Carter, in The Bloody Chamber, revives folklore's brides as Gothic undead, their sanguine awakenings echoing Poe's sensual resurrections, reimagined as subversions of male-dominated crypts into arenas of feminist rage, the repressed feminine reclaiming agency. Shirley Jackson evokes Lenore's intangible presence in The Haunting of Hill House, where Eleanor Vance serves as a conduit for the mansion's lingering women, their amalgamated spirits unraveling sanity, defying interment in societal domesticity as repressed isolation returns to claim its due. Caitlin R. Kiernan, in The Drowning Girl, crafts submerged reincarnations of forsaken affections, queer and abyssal, akin to Ligeia's obsessive reclamation, intertwining recollection and delirium like entangled, drowned forms, the repressed erotic depths surfacing in fluid horror. Carmen Maria Machado, in Her Body and Other Parties, vivisects lingering corpses, spouses who dissipate yet dominate, paralleling Morella's ghostly progeny, transmuting wounds into assertive corporeal dread, where the repressed body rebels against erasure. These successors amplify Poe's archetype, deceased women as loci of objection, their ascensions a dissection of craving, suppression, and the seductive decay, interweavings where tombs metamorphose into cradles of insurgency, Freud's return manifesting in literary undeath. Hence, it is fitting for the architect of these immortal fixations that his own corpse was uprooted, relocated, misplaced, and reburied in a macabre comedy, the repressed refusing eternal rest even in death. Part 3. The Justice of Foreign Penitence and Modern Heirs. In his homeland, Poe was derided, libelled, dismissed as a wretch. Rufus Griswold, his venomous foe, penned an obituary laced with lies, a slander that festered on his memory like grave mould for generations. Yet across the storm-tossed Atlantic, in Paris's fog-choked alleys and opium-laced dens, a sinister symphony swelled. Charles Baudelaire, bard of depravity and doom, unearthed Poe's tomes and beheld a kindred abyss. Here lurked a soul, attuned to rot's allure, despair's sanctity, and the profane bond between demise and forbidden longing. Baudelaire's own Fleur du Mal, blooming from Poe's decayed petals. Baudelaire worshipped him, rendered him in French, avenged him, proclaimed him a destined martyr, insisting fate had conspired against him. His renditions infested France with Poe's essence, where reverence bloomed before America's grudging absolution. Stéphane Mallarmé followed, enshrining Poe as oracle, transmuting his verses into symbols of transcendent dread. Then Dostoevsky, plumbing psychological chasms, Jorge Luis Borges, weaving labyrinths of infinity, and legions more, drawing from Poe's inexhaustible void. While Americans left him unmarked, it was these alien devotees who orchestrated his intellectual revival. Not with chisels on stone, but with ink and incantation. They disinterred him from obscurity's crypt, bearing his spirit forth on winds of foreign adulation. In contemporary shadows, this lineage persists. Writers like Jahan Brian Ihsan, whose Valley versus Vector gropes the necrotic underbelly of American piety. Ihsan, steeped in psychoanalytic dread, employs necrophilia as metaphor. The nation's zealous fondling of religion's lifeless husk, a corpse of fanaticism that won't stay buried, paralleling Poe's women in their abject resurrections as interpreted. Here, Christian horrors rise not as saviours, but contagions, sentient, transformative plagues that devour and rebirth the faithful in grotesque ecstasy, a folk horror indictment of zealotry's undead grip on the American soul. If rebirth avenges the damned, then Baudelaire, Europe's haunted scribes, and now Ihsan wrought Poe's spectral justice, interweaving his dead women's defiance into critiques of cultural decay. Part 4. Linger now by Poe's Baltimore sepulchre. Heed the silence. Sense the soil's subtle heave, as if something subterranean stirs anew. The return of the repressed manifesting in earthen unrest, where buried impulses, like the undead women of his tales, refuse to lie dormant, fermenting desires that death cannot entomb. The atmosphere quivers with unrest, a premonition that the tenant toys with escape, his own frame echoing the spectral resurgences of Ligeia, Morella, Madeline and Lenore, where repressed longings claw back from the psyche's depths, defying the grave's hush in a Freudian echo of unrelenting will. Legends murmur of breathing tombs, of earth that recalls its grudges, and graves like Poe's, eternally agitated, for the nightmares they cradle refuse conclusion. The repressed returning not just in fiction, but in the bungled, misrecognized burial of the chronicler himself, staged like macabre puppetry, his influence seeping into every unquiet air who exhumes and reanimates his motifs. This is Edgar Allan Poe's horror, a visionary whose apparitions of undead women, embodiments of the repressed erupting as eroticized phantoms, bled into his own cursed fate and into the tomes of those who follow, from Carter's feminist furies to Jackson's spectral isolations, Kiernan's abyssal affections, and Machado's defiant corporeal horrors. A soul whose fables reek of mildewed vaults, flickering tapers, and the cloying chill of revived exhalations, repressed traumas ascending like half-invoked maledictions, binding the living to decay, interred once in oblivion, thrice in dubious splendour, never truly anchored, his essence mirroring the women who fester and ascend, evoking Jahan Ihsan's profound psychological necrophilia, which in his writings so masterfully tethers enduring legacy to the inexorable grip of loss, resurrected by distant poets who cherished him with fiercer zeal than his native soil ever mustered. and by modern chroniclers who exhume his motifs anew, interweaving the return of the repressed into fresh intertexts that keep the dead stirring, whose creations defied death and who inexorably emulated them, spawning a web where tombs become wombs for rebellion, Freud's inexorable resurgence woven into every undead echo. Tonight, as these words coil into your ears, you summon him once more, invoking the repressed that hovers like a lover's cold embrace. Poe endures unending, his women, his wraiths, his tomb, his echo, resounding eternally in the necrotic vision.